that it's the birthplace for, especially given that it's the place where many of the Aboriginal controlled organisations in Sydney started that spread around Australia. And so it has a very special Aboriginal community. And one of the things that the Aboriginal community has been asking for is Aboriginal affordable housing in this place to keep a viable community in the Redfern-Waterloo area. So I want to acknowledge the importance of the place and pay respects. So today we want to do a little bit of a exploration of this new thing called Homes New South Wales. People will be aware that it came into existence on the 1st of February, and it brings together Land and Housing Corporation, the Department of Communities Justice, Housing, DCJ Housing, as well as the Aboriginal Housing Office and parts of affordable housing within that was in the Department of Planning. So it's going to cover everything from what happens as far as maintenance to allocations to homelessness to redevelopment, right across that broad spectrum. And it's putting together two organisations that have been put together, pulled apart, put together, pulled apart, now put together again. So one of the big questions is, how is all that going to work so it delivers what the Minister has talked about as far as an improved experience for people coming out of homelessness, people in public housing, and people that deal with the redevelopment and all the other parts of that business. While we're waiting for the Minister, I might introduce Rebecca Pinkstone, who is the new, the Minister arrived, so maybe.
I don't think he's the Minister's role. It asked me thought.
Hello, Rose. Thank you. We've just welcome, just acknowledge country. If you'd like to come on up. So this is a different night to when we normally. We know it doesn't quite fit for some people, but we have to work with the Minister and all the Minister's activities. So this was the closest to our normal meeting time, and we really appreciate, given that Homes has only been in existence 3 days, that the Minister and some of the senior people within Homes have been able to today. We recognise that the Minister is only going to be here for a relatively short period of time. So without any further ado, I'll pass over to ask her to tell people what this Homes New South Wales thing is, what you're hoping it'll achieve, how it's been done, and what people can expect. And I mean, realistically, how long some of those sort of changes might last. So,
sure. Yeah, thanks. Hello, everyone. For those of you who haven't met, my name's Rose. I'm the Minister for Housing and Homelessness and a couple of other things, but for the purposes of our conversation, I think probably housing and homelessness. It's great to be here with Rebecca Pinkstone, who's the inaugural CEO of Homes New South Wales. So she might talk a little bit about our aspirations for this organisation. I'm happy to answer questions. And we have a couple of other representatives from Homes in the room as well, in particularly Michael and DJ from our assets team, who, you know, are happy to answer any questions in detail about some of the work that we're going to try to do through maintenance. And they probably will have to take some notes at the end. Sorry, if people have got issues that they need followed up. But we're here to show up to be part of these conversations because we actually think that it's important to show up and talk. I'm sorry that I can't stay very late today. It's a Parliament sitting week, so I'm out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at Parliament, and then I'm travelling to the North Coast on Friday. And so I do want to get home and see my kids a little bit tonight after this. So please excuse me if I have to leave after about 30 or 40 minutes. But look, really just wanted to turn up and say, we promised that we wanted to do social and affordable housing better in New South Wales, and Homes New South Wales is part of delivering on that promise. Is it everything? No. We know there's so much more work to do, but this new agency creates our hope for a structure that is going to be able to do a couple of things. One, deliver more social housing, more public housing, community housing. We know that that's critically important. We don't have enough. There are too many people on the waiting too long. We know we need more. This new agency is about having the streamlined processes to deliver more. We want those homes to be better homes. We want to make sure they're disability accessible. We want to make sure they're energy efficient, because that's obviously good for the environment. It's also good for people's bills. So, you know, we've got a big piece of work to do to ensure that the homes that we are delivering are modern, good, quality homes, homes that offer dignity, decent homes. That's part of our remit as well. We also want to make sure that we are doing better for the people who currently live in our homes. We know that those people have not been shown the sort of dignity and responsiveness that, you know, we think we aspire to. I've reflected on this before. The New South Wales government shouldn't be amongst the worst landlords in the state. We should be the best. We should be the model landlord. We've got a while to go to meet that goal, but that's what we want to be. We want to be someone, an organisation that is modelling best practice. And so part of it is creating an agency that gets back to people, is responsive to their requests, talks to them with dignity, talks to them, you know, understanding the concerns that they have and has those concerns addressed quickly. Part of that is the new maintenance contract that we're doing, and I'm happy to answer some questions about that, but we know that that has to be done better. And so that's a big piece of work that Rebecca and her team will be delivering this year. So that's our aspiration, Jeff. And, you know, look, at the moment, 3 days in, you know, we know that, you know, we feel as though we've put the structure in place. Of course, now it's about delivering on the promise. Of course, talk is cheap. Of course, everyone here is going to really legitimately put on me, yeah, okay, you've said these things, but, you know, are you going to do them? Well, that's the plan. And I just hope to continue to be accountable to that. You know, I come to forums like this, you know, other forums of, you know, gatherings of residents across the state, you know, out in Riverwood I've been to, or not so many, you know, turning up to community centres, to neighbourhood centres to just be accountable, you know, for delivering on the promises that we've made. So I hope that gives people a little bit of a sense of an overview. We've just got some fact sheets here, you know, just some printed info as well. Give people a little bit of an overview. Rebecca, I might just see if there's anything you want to add, and then I think we're happy to answer questions or just take feedback. You know, people share your views with us. Let us know what you think, what you want from this organisation.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Pinkstone. I think I've met a lot of you around the traps. So I came on board 3 days ago in the role, so very new. I worked in what was then Housing New South Wales for 12 years before I left and moved to community housing, and I've been at Bridge Housing for the last 9 years. When I started in housing, I just absolutely got the passion for it, because there's no way you can transform your life without a home, and every day being a part of building those new homes and delivering homes and making lives better has just been amazing. I'm really excited about the opportunity that Homes New South Wales provides. I've been on the outside, and I've been caught in the middle between DCJ and LAHC as a contracted service provider to government. And I can only imagine what it feels like for our tenants and residents to be caught in that as well. I really firmly believe that our residents are not just our tenants and residents, but they're our customers. They're our eyes and ears on the ground, and that we need to be working really strongly with our tenants to really understand what's happening in their homes and deliver a better service. So my focus has got 2 parts in homes. It's setting those things in place, I think, that Rose talked about, to set the framework to be the best housing agency in Australia. We're the biggest, but we can actually be the best. And it's also to look at our core part of our business, which is delivering public housing. You know, over 90,000 homes, 150,000 people, and actually delivering a better service for them on the ground. So what are some of the things I've seen that contrast really dramatically with community housing? Staff management ratios, the ability to speak to your housing manager, the ability to get your maintenance done and know where it's up to and get that responsiveness. So going back to basics around customer service and service delivery is going to be a big focus for us in the team. I'm just now hearing about from Michael, the new maintenance contract, but absolutely believe that's the best way to go. That you have the call centre that's answering the calls from the residents, issuing the works order separate from the contractors who are delivering that service, and that we've got a strong team locally that's checking up that the work's completed and checking back with our residents that it's at a standard and a quality that you deserve and everyone should expect. And I know that there's a lot of debate about whether or not tenants are customers. I firmly believe they are. Tenant rents fund our business. They drive and pay for our staff's wages. So yes, tenants are both citizens and tenants, but they're also our customers. And one of the big things I want to bring back is some of those customer service standards locally that tenants can be really clear about what they can expect and the service that they can get back from us. The other thing that we've talked about is also how we engage with tenants. And that's one of the big marked differences I see in community housing versus public housing. We have strong tenants groups locally that provide that vehicle for tenants to come together and provide feedback on our services. They make our services better because of that lived experience. So part of that work will be rebuilding those local structures and working with our tenants locally to have that voice into how we do our work. So there's some big transformations that's going to come along as a result of homes. But core to that for a tenant's perspective is that there will be local officers that are accountable to tenants. You won't be passed between one and other departments or different divisions. You'll have central points of contact and we'll be working towards those customer service standards with you that you can hold us accountable to and that we can continue to work with you and deliver a better service over time. Look, this is not going to happen overnight. When I left the department 10 years ago, that's when I saw the writing on the wall. It was when it was being split apart and Land and Housing Corporation, our colleagues were going off and housing was being separated out. Aboriginal housing was completely somewhere else as well. It's going to take us a while to rebuild and get that connection and those local services happening, but there is a genuine commitment for that to happen. And I think the new maintenance contract will really drive some of that locally.
So just on the customer service side of things, DCJ has their housing practice standards. Is that the starting point for customer service within Homes New South Wales?
Absolutely.
So tenants would have seen that go out in the December newsletter that went out from DCJ that talked about what those expectations are in terms of how staff and tenants should interact. Any questions?
Yeah, look, I think it's wonderful what you're saying, but in order to actually do that, it would seem to me that you need to have a whole lot more resources, like money, put in from the government. I mean, is that the commitment from the state government to put a lot more resources into public housing?
That's the commitment like that. I can't speak for the whole of government. I can't promise you that all of my colleagues are going to agree with the budget, to deliver the resources that I'll be asking for. I will say two things. One, I know that is true. Said this clearly to Rebecca. I know that the shell needs to be filled with the resources to deliver. We will be fighting for that through the budget process. Budget's in the middle of the year. I can say that we've pitched up some bold plans already. And the second thing I would say is people may have seen, perhaps they didn't, but it was in the papers today that the Treasurer himself got up at a speech this morning and talked about the housing crisis that we're experiencing, talked about the intergenerational inequality that is being caused because of these lack of resources. So I certainly paid a lot of notice to that. And I guess I say it to you as there is a clear understanding within the government that we need to do more. But, that's the accountability. That's the accountability that I expect you to hold me to. If I turn up, next time after the budget and, 2 bits of nothing was delivered, then you're going to be able to say, yeah, but, now you don't have the resources that you need, but I'm confident that we will get it.
You have a huge estate, which is a fantastic, it seems to me that brings wonderful opportunities. And one of those is to reskill the government agencies and to put the maintenance people back as being public servants. So that you encourage continuing relationships, you know, where you have a plumber or a painter who is getting to know houses in your portfolio and gets to know the people who live in the houses. Will you be looking further down the track at actually doing that, bringing the maintenance back into the department?
There is a broader piece of work that's happening around procurement, that's being led by the Minister for Procurement. There's a parliamentary inquiry on right now. And, you know, some of the kind of concepts that you've raised around procurement of services and public works are part of that. I would only say that's at the moment a whole of government conversation, because those skills that you've described, plumbing, maintenance, carpentry, etc., they're not just needed for housing, of course, they're needed for other parts of government assets. And so, you know, whether or not we may be able to do that more broadly, we're exploring. The step that we're taking is all of the interactions that tenants will have around, I need this plumbing work done, I need this carpentry done, you know, I need this work done, will be with public servants. The next step to actually have the plumbers and the carpenters and those tradies directly on our books, that's not something that we're taking right now. But as I said, Courtney, the Minister for Procurement, is in a broader conversation about how government procures and delivers its services.
It's related to this lady's question about resources. And if the question is, like London Housing Corporation used to be a self-funded corporation. Now, I know you got some money, you managed to grant some from the budget and hand it to them. Will they cease to become, one, will they cease to become a self-funding corporation? And two, will the Treasury rules about asset management, so where your business case has to be break even or make a profit, will that change too?
Yeah, so, well, at the moment, the stop on the sale of public housing is still in place. So they're not self-funding at the moment, though you are exactly right. What you have described, where they were required to sell their assets in order to fund their basic operations, that is not in operation. That is no longer in operation. The bit that I haven't yet fully landed, the job for Rebecca and me and the team, is, yeah, what's next? Yeah. What is the different model? What's the new model? What are the resources we need as we move away from that? This budget, we need to answer that question. I know that. They know that. I'm confident that my colleagues understand that the only solution to answering that, the only other solution to answering that question in a comprehensive, sustainable way, giving us the resources, is go back to the old model. And that's not acceptable to me, and it's not acceptable to government. So we have to do something else. The budget, we're going to land it.
Interesting, thank you.
Yeah. Linda's just saying the Commonwealth's giving more to, we say up.
Oh, back to you in a minute.
Yeah, but 82 Wentworth Park Road is, has been, slated for demolition. So I don't understand what this statement is about no more privatisation when that's going, and Waterloo, plus others. So I don't understand your statement that you're saying that no more public housing is being demolished when I was about 6 months ago, and all of the things in our building.
It's nice to see you again, Carolyn, and I know that we disagree about a path forward on 82 Wentworth Park Road. Nothing's being sold. Nothing's being privatised. It is not true that we won't sometimes knock down public housing and build more. We may do that. We need more. We need more.
It's in a terrible condition.
That's right. So I'm trying to be clear. It is none of it's being sold.
82 is only 37 years old.
None of it's being privatised. What we're doing at 82 Wentworth Park Road is replacing 17 government dwellings with 43 government dwellings.
But it won't be public
And
housing.
it will be public
No,
housing.
because you've said that a community housing provider is being.
No, 82 Wentworth Park Road is not guaranteed. Hold me to account to it. It is not being managed by a community housing provider. It is being managed by the New South Wales government. Now, having said that, I'm not against community housing providers playing a role too. I will always give honest answers. At 82 Wentworth Park Road, that is a fully government-run housing estate going from 17 to 43. Community housing have a role to play too.
Oh, yeah, I wish
Um,
people would.
But I will say this, there will be demolitions. Sometimes old estates that are not purpose will be knocked down. That will only ever be to build more better homes. And I know sometimes that's hard. And I'm not trying to gloss over the challenges associated with some of those relocations. You have a guaranteed right of return, a guaranteed right to go back. A guaranteed right, as I said, I know that sometimes we're going to disagree and that's okay. We'll keep showing up and having respectful, honest conversations. We know the tenant communication has to be better. People have a guaranteed right of return, but we need more homes. We can't just sit on the estate we have. And so sometimes turning fewer older homes into more modern homes is going to be the best path forward for the state, I believe.
Question here.
Hello, my name's Cheryl Lekstrom and I'm from Glebe. And I just get away from homes at the moment. But we have a community centre in Glebe. It's owned by Lands and Housing and the Department of Communities and Justice are the landlord. The old fire station is what it's known as. I'd like to know your direction. All I've read about is homes and housing and tenants and homes, again, which all the research is saying, but no one's ever mentioning the buildings that you own. And we are in a position at the moment where the beautiful building that we are in, providing a service that we can maintain at the moment, has been let run down over the last 2 years. With no communication back, 6 to 7 emails I've sent in the last 2 weeks with no response. So customer service is going to be quality at the end of the day. Perhaps just a return email would be nice to say, I'm sorry, we're not handling this at the moment. We're in the midst of changeover. We'll get back to you. But I've heard that for 2 years now. So if a direction could be just looked at in that area of the community centre that we have service to the community for like this is, but not as most probably as grand as this one at the moment. We've been running for a long time there, but I'm afraid that she's wearing out very fast because no one has taken the time to take on board and have a look. Well, lots of people have had a look, but nothing gets done. So would you be kind enough to take that on board? I have sent you a letter. And to have just someone to have a look and not just come and have a look, because there's lots of photos being sent, lots of emails being sent, and we would like to keep providing that community centre and keep it accessible to the community.
Why don't I take that?
Yeah,
one
that's
on?
great. And
I'll take it on. I know that. I know the venue. It's a great venue, and it's I think I've been party to a number of the Lord Mayor's forums there as well over the years.
Not Glebe Town Hall.
No, I know the fire station. Yeah. So I'm happy to take that one on board and come back to you around that.
also, it's not kindness, it's our job. So I'm
Yeah.
sorry that responsiveness hasn't been there,
You
but
personally can't come and
Sure.
fix up broken glass and door frames. and-
but thank you for coming and
However,
raising it with us. That's how it's going to work.
And this building you're in also is owned by Land Housing Corporation. Yep.
Yeah, just on similar situation, I'm from the John Northcott building. We've got a community centre there which was run extremely successful. Jekyll and Hyde vouch for that. Extremely successful by tenant volunteers for, I don't know, 10 or 12 years maybe. Then LAHC Housing decided that no, they were taking over management of all those things. It's been virtually more or less closed for probably 4 or 5 years. It's open, they've got a cafe there on a Wednesday and we have all harvest, but, you know, and we have the NAB meetings, but it's as far as community goes, it's just not existent anymore, and it's supposedly all falls to the community development worker. I don't know how many of those we've had in the last 3 or 4 years, you know, where they go from sort of, from reasonably useless to totally useless, sorry.
No.
And you know, so that's, if we're looking at Councillor Scott's familiar with the building. The building's all right, but it's just, there's no community action, and that's all happened since housing has taken over.
Yeah.
There's something to look
Yeah,
at.
yeah, I think it is a good point around tenant participation, because you really do need somebody working and driving that and facilitating the community getting involved as well.
There
Yeah.
are tenants that are happy to volunteer, but now that we can't manage ourselves, they're supposedly being managed by that, and there's just no management. But for example, with the heat recently, council opened a heat cooling hub in Ward Park, etc. But in the heat like today, community volunteers would have had it open with the air conditioning on and some soft vents. Not allowed to do that anymore. And it's been,
Yeah.
Thanks to see you again, by the way. I hope that some of those issues that we tried to be the weekend in Northcote are still okay.
I was just going to add that I think it's maybe not the case for you, Colleen, but in some of the other areas, I believe is the perfect example. Unfortunately, also many of the cities' community centres, which had full-time staff in them before COVID, that staffing complement hasn't been returned. And so you've often had community service workers pulled from council community centres at the same time, and that's been quite problematic.
We're not, and we don't, it's not a city community. centre.
No, it's not a city community centre, but I know
It's all volunteers.
the staff that used to work full-time at Glen Town Hall, would promote your services, for example, and, refer people to the great service that you had, and now there's not a full-time staff in it. So Sylvie, who's here, and I have been working very hard at council to try and get those full-time city staff members back into our community, so that, all these different groups can better work together. That system has fallen apart a bit though.
And I think the other thing that's also changed is that if you go back a few years, DCJ was funding community development programs. So you had one from Uni of New South Wales, one operating at Sydney University. You had a funded position just for Redfern-Waterloo doing that community development, and then it was decided that that wasn't their role, that wasn't their job. And so that sort of community building infrastructure that you need to build community participation disappeared.
Yeah.
So I think that all needs to be
Rebecca and I have already talked about wanting to look to return, bring back better models of that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because what Linda's saying, the same thing is happening in other areas. And the reason we were given that here at West for all volunteers, sorry, you're all got to go home now, was WHS, insurance, a whole ton of those issues. So good luck with that. Yeah.
Karen.
Just back to the normal privatisation, as far as I know, the plans for Waterloo South will be 100% private. So is that going to change at all, or is it still going to be 100% private?
Well, I mean, as I said, I don't necessarily accept that community housing providers are a private provision. I don't. And as I said, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. I know that we need more public housing. I'm the minister for delivering more public housing. But our community housing partners are an important part of the story. And so I understand that some people are of the view that community housing provider managed public housing is some form of privatisation. I just don't accept that. They are fantastic partners who, in my experience, are highly regulated, deliver a good service, have good feedback from tenants. All of those things are important to me. They are playing an incredibly important role on our behalf. But look, as I said, and this is just going to have to be one of those areas where some other people have a different perspective to me. I'm for all of the above. More public housing and more community housing. But look, as I said, I understand not everyone shares that perspective.
But 50% won't community housing or affordable or anything, that will be sold.
No land at Waterloo will be sold. We're not selling any land. We are providing some space for broad different models of housing, affordable housing, some private market housing and social housing. We're not selling any land. We are delivering a significant number of new homes to that community, as well as all excellent amenity to support that. It's really important to me that we build a really good community that has supported by community amenity. And again, in some of those areas where there is a lot of housing, I actually think that some of the experience is that those mixed models work very well. We definitely need more social housing, more public housing, more community housing, but also having affordable housing for people who aren't eligible for social housing, but are really struggling in the private rental market. I think that's a good thing. And some private housing too, mixing it up. Supported, of course, as I said, by amenities. So again, no land's being sold, nothing being sold to private anyone. But we are creating a new mixed estate there at Waterloo.
So question online, how does Homes plan to embed the voice of lived experience in all aspects of work, especially within LAHC?
Well, I mean, a great question. Rebecca, you might reflect on that one.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that there's a few ways we do that. It's the way that we deliver our services locally. And I have to say, coming in after a number of years, there's been a gradual dismantling of tenant advisory group structures across New South Wales. Those are coming back. I just firmly believe that you deliver better services when you've got the voice of people who are actually living in the properties there, providing that advice. But it has to be a little bit more than that. And I think that how you can do that at another level is when you're implementing new policies, when you're thinking about new programs, that you actually go out and test those and get the voices of people who are living and have that experience as well. So what I want to really think about is when we're driving these changes, yes, locally we need that input and advice and driving customer service and hearing from tenants about how maintenance is delivered on the ground and your experiences of your housing manager and what that means. But I think also as an agency, when we're implementing new programs and big reforms, we need tenant voice into that. And so part of the work will be, how do you really have a tenant participation structure for homes, which embeds that local voice, but also looks at how we develop policy and procedure and gets that in, including the voices of our peak agencies, of tenants advocates that are representing our tenants, and having a holistic sort of approach to that at lots of different levels, so that you're testing your ideas and you're getting that feedback continually.
Can I just give an example of that? Sometimes it's good to be practical. Part of the new maintenance contract, we're doing an app. Homes will have an app where people can go on really easily and lodge maintenance issues. I've got a broken window, I've got a leaking tap. The development of the app is literally being tested with tenants. So no more sort of some random app developer out there like doing something. How will tenants actually be able to use it? And that's just one example of an app. But we, from the very beginning, as Rebecca said, went, right, well, we're doing something new for our tenants. Our tenants need to be involved in the design phase right up front. So that's just an example of what Rebecca's referring to. To be honest, I think it's going to make the app better and more user-friendly.
I'm not a math person.
I
was about to ask that question. Well done.
I should have earlier on acknowledged the number of council members. We could almost have a council members.
I'm just thinking elders and
Yeah.
Yeah. There'll definitely still be a phone. I mean, I think that's the beauty of having the Homes line internally, that you still have that ability to call up and log your call and speak to somebody on the end of the line, that understands that and is employed by Homes New South Wales as well. I think that's really important. I mean, I will go back to the thing. Obviously, I've worked in both public housing and community housing. There's enough of a housing crisis to go around. What's happened is, because there's been such a housing crisis and a shortage of social housing, we've created these false debates between public and community housing. Actually, community controlled housing is great. Cooperative models are great, and we should be looking at different models to empower people to have subsidised housing. And that's certainly what I'll be looking at. Part of that is also having a great public housing system. It is the majority of housing in New South Wales is delivered through public housing. So that standard needs to be maintained and improved. And I'm confident that we can do that. But the reality is there are a number of tax settings and other policy settings that partnering with community housing providers makes sense. So wherever possible, we've got to be looking through the lens of how to maximise social housing on the ground. And I think there's lots of different ways you do that, and you do it differently in different locations and different housing markets. So we have to be open to doing it in different ways and getting the best of all of the delivery partners, including the private sector. some large scale redevelopments, you do need to work with the private sector on developing those, but how you then deliver and engage with communities locally is a separate issue, and that's something that Homes will be really focused on over the long term.
Two things I wanted to raise is, one is in that space of customer service is how Homes in South Wales hopefully will work better with the community sector, who's actually working with individuals who are having housing issues and how to best advocate. We're not resourced through the funding that we get from other agencies, so hopefully Homes in South Wales makes a commitment to better educate our staff so we can be better advocates with the tenants who want us to support them in that way.
Absolutely.
I think right now, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and that needs to change.
Yeah.
It's not fair. It's not transparent. It's around the temporary accommodation space, and in out-of-home care, they know that the alternate care accommodation won't help folks at vulnerable children and young people. They're not having that conversation in housing. I work for Pinkstone Boys Home Aboriginal Corporation. We have an 82-year-old stolen generation survivor, his 41-year-old son that in December came up from Albury after having fled family violence. They've been living in our office since December 22nd, and a lot of that is because they don't want to go into a accommodation that's a motel because they don't feel safe. So we bought them cots, and luckily we have a shower. So that's where they are. And this again is one housing office is treating them one way. We've moved them to the inner city because they want to be here, and that's what they've said ever since December. Hopefully that's going to change. But here you have an 83-year-old elder with a 1-year-old son with an intellectual disability.
I mean, certainly on the first point, absolutely agree. I know Rebecca does too. We're extremely enthusiastic about the opportunity to partner with better resources and support our community partners. They play an incredibly important role. You're absolutely right about temporary accommodation, the system. I mean, it doesn't get as much prominence perhaps as the out-of-home care situation you described. I'm very focused on it. We have a whole piece of work within the department to review the way that we're delivering temporary accommodation. I don't want people stuck in motels. It's expensive, they're crap. At the moment, it's the only alternative we have for a lot of people to them living on the street. So of course, playing an important role there, but clearly it's not a functional system. It's not really working for us, and it's not really working for the people who are living there, as I said, except that in a lot of circumstances, it's better than the alternative of rough sleeping. But we have a really clear line of sight on how we need to do more to ensure that the temporary accommodation and emergency accommodation is better for everyone.
I mean, Tiffany, the issue that you're talking about in terms of partnerships also goes to how we're staffing public housing locally. I mean, the reality is if you've got a portfolio of 450 or 500 properties, very hard to work in partnership with your community partners. So over time, we actually need to address that issue in public housing, that, a customer service officer, CSO or housing manager needs to have a realistic portfolio number that enables them to work and engage with services that are now really feeling that. So that's part of what we'll need to look at locally around providing those services. It's just getting very, very high now, and I don't know how you do that as a housing. Having been a housing manager, I don't know how people do that with a portfolio of that size. So we've got to look at how we resource that frontline service delivery better to work in partnership too.
I want to get back to this issue of community housing. I live in a small estate in Surrey Hills, and what I've seen of community housing, I think would be a vast improvement for me if we were managed by a community housing provider. Now, I know in the past that governments have wanted to really expand the community sector. And in fact, I think at one stage they were being given so many properties that they weren't actually able to cope. So I'm just curious to know what's the view of the current government in terms of expanding the community sector?
Yeah, I mean, look, as I said, I'm for more of everything. So I do want the community housing sector to expand. I also want the public housing portfolio to expand. I mean, it's interesting your feedback, and I do hear that. I think one of the things that is happening is the Commonwealth is, as Linda mentioned earlier, stepping in, doing more, which is great. We of course want them to do more and more, but they are doing more, and we're thankful of that. Their funding for the Housing Australia is really a lot of that is geared towards community housing. I mean, you know, that's, some of those settings aren't necessarily exactly what the New South Wales government should welcome, but we do welcome their funding stream through to community housing to grow that sector. And as I said, I welcome that. I want more of them. I want more of us. We just need more. I might have to go in a teacher.
With your tenant app,
Chair.
your app for maintenance, sorry.
Which one? The right
The
question.
problems that we've got now, you're very aware of
Last
the
one.
maintenance, no doubt. Have you got a contingency plan other than an app for, I'm a tenant rep in my area, and then there are people over 70.
Oh, we
So
absolutely do.
with technology, I understand all of this, all right? I do. However, have we got a contingency and an indicator that we can, some performance indicator that shows what we're going to be doing for those? at
Yes,
home?
we do. Absolutely. As Rebecca said, we will still have phone calls. You will still be able to go, well, in fact, it will be improved. You'll be able to go into the housing office and directly engage.
So the phone will be the best, and we know that, and that's why, you know, that's a primary vehicle, is for people to be able to call, and also for advocates to be able to call and check up on the status for people as well.
Could you look at something, sorry, just very quickly, along those lines? I mean, I'm forever walking around. We haven't got a form or anything, for example, that I could fill out for an elderly person.
Yeah.
And take it to the service centre myself.
Yes,
There's also
absolutely.
a-
What's the vehicle for people who are advocating? Absolutely. We can come back around that, but there will be, yeah.
Maybe one last question for the Minister before she leaves. Someone here is, has there been any moves by the New South Wales government to create a senior housing service like Homes in Victoria?
Yeah, I mean, that absolutely. So we are exploring that. That was a recommendation from the parliamentary inquiry we did into older people and homelessness. So, you know, as I mentioned, as part of the budgetary process that we're going through, and now that we have homes established, you know, we are looking at how we can build out our infrastructure. I think Home at Last does play a really important role. It doesn't only work. It works a lot better if there are housing solutions for the people. Like Home at Last is a support and referral service, which we do absolutely need, but we have to put it alongside someone to talk to, a place to go, someone to support you. Really only works if it's like, here's somewhere where you can actually go and access housing. So we're going to keep focused on that, but we do know that model. I think it has a lot of merit and we are exploring it.
Right. Well, thanks very much.
Thank
Just
you.
for spending a bit of time. We will continue on with Rebecca and Michael sorry. You can ask your question.
Rebecca, these women here find it a bit hard to ask a question in a public forum. They've got some questions that they wanted to give you about the standards of cleanliness in their units. And also I think probably goes to a question that many other people have in the room about, you know, people feeling safe in their homes and security of access. So these women have got some examples. I won't go into them. I'll give you the
Give them
documents
to me and I'll
about,
follow up on them and come back to
you know, the cleanliness, the kind of standards of hygiene
Yeah.
in their homes, which are, you know, not appropriate. And we've been speaking to some other people tonight just about the number of people who don't feel safe in their homes. We know that there's been security guards implemented in a lot of the foyers, but often they're not well trained, or they don't, you know, necessarily stop people who aren't residents from coming in. You've been in the job 3 days. I'm sure you don't have an answer. We don't expect you to have one tonight, but you know, people often ask me to raise this with the councillor to the state government.
Yeah.
So if you could just take that on board. I think
Absolutely. Happy to take it on board and follow up for you. And then when I've got my head around it a little bit, we'll come back and we can have a conversation about it as well. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So
I
I guess
guess I've
one
got
of
a, sorry, I've just got a question following that. So
Yep.
with all of these maintenance issues, a lot of it has to do with the timeliness associated with delivering, let's say, a complaint or about maintenance and that sort of thing. Is there a time-bound performance indicator that you'll be implementing for immediate and non-immediate repairs.
Yes, there will be, and Michael can come up and talk about the standards.
So yes, there is, will be time and performance.
You want to come up, Matt, you can as well as you.
That may-
As part of the contract, we actually have different time performance standards depending on the criticality of the item. So, for example, if a toilet is blocked, there's a 2-hour response time. If there's something that is non-critical, then there might be a longer response time. So we do have those. We'll be strengthening those. But what we're also doing is we are cutting some steps out of the process to also be able to better respond to maintenance. So previously there were a lot of maintenance requests where the contractor would get the call, go out and have a look at it, and then price it, take photo, that's how it comes back, come to us, log it, and whatever. So that step in the process is actually being cut out. So the call will come straight to Homes New South Wales, and they will try to engage with you on the phone directly, even if you can use FaceTime it, show to clarify what it is, and then they will issue an order directly to the tradespeople to just go out and do it. So there is some steps cut out. So hopefully that will improve along with maintaining the performance standards.
So this is exactly what I'm talking about in terms of customer service standards. So Jeff, we talked about, we have some agreed ways of working, which are about treating people with respect and how you respond to them. What I'm eager to do is to actually work on really clear customer service standards. So you know what to expect if you've logged an urgent call and what time frame that would be. If you're contacting your housing manager, you can expect a return call by this time. It's to be really specific about the customer service standards we have and how people will respond. Because at the moment, there's a lot of complaints that we're receiving, which is about people just not getting back to people. I mean, that's a very common complaint. And I think those are the things that we can really start responding to locally. Who do you go to locally? At the moment, it's really difficult to know who's accountable. I'm very much a believer in local service delivery delivered by local people. And I think that we need to bring that local accountability back so that if you have an issue in Waterloo or in Redfern, you know who the housing person is and how to escalate that and how to get that resolved if you're not getting the service. So those are the sort of things I'm talking about in terms of customer service that are really practical and that you know where to go when you need something resolved. So that you're not forced to have to contact the minister about every complaint because you just don't know who to contact anymore. Some of those standard things I think we need to bring back to build up that local response for our residents.
There's probably two parts to that. One part of that is that if you've got a CSO that's dealing with so many people, they don't have time to be able to follow that. But then there's also the visibility of where you go when there's a problem, when you don't get a response. And I guess that opens up the question, would be good to just clarify, we've talked a lot about sort of the lack parts of it, but the DCJ housing part of it, the housing managers are now directly under your team.
Right.
So they're no longer going through the local DCJ district director.
Yeah.
So if we've got an issue that's not been escalated, where do we go? What are the escalation pathways? It would be good to clarify those as early as possible so that then people can then feed into the system what's working and what's not working.
So part of what we need to do is a functional review. We've just got 3,000 people put together in Homes New South Wales as an agency. And part of the unpacking and why homelessness isn't there at the moment is because at the moment it's contracted out in the districts, it's complicated, it's mixed in with child protection and disability. So we are moving homelessness policy and service delivery into homes, and that will happen. So I need a little bit more than 3 days, Jeff, is my response to you. But part of that is really about how we set up those local structures. And Michael's talked about the maintenance contract. Well, that means we're going to be having Homes New South Wales staff that are our technical officers and who are doing our scoping and understanding the sort of portfolio, they'll be part of that district group as well. Yes, they will report through and have their asset partners in head office, but locally, those people will know the properties locally, they'll know the residents, and they'll work with their DCJ or their housing colleagues who are providing the services to know their community. That's going to take a bit of time to get there, but that's where we're going. Absolutely. It's about a local structure that responds to local need.
So does that mean Ventia is no
Yes,
longer the
that's right.
preferred?
Ventia, well, we're in the middle of contracting out. So one of the questions, there will still be an outsourced maintenance contract. They'll be much smaller and they'll be reporting through to that district. But, and we'll be monitoring and issuing the works orders and doing that work within Homes New South Wales. Our staff will be the ones auditing the performance of the contractors. They'll be responding, and I'm firmly of the view that actually it doesn't matter how many staff you've got in Homes New South Wales, tenants are your eyes and ears on the ground. They should be the ones signing off on works that are completed. When tenants aren't happy, we need to go back to tenants to get that view. They're the 150,000 people that do the work on the ground for us if we're working in partnership with them, because we can never have enough government staff. And we need to think about where our priorities are for our staff on the ground. And that's really around housing management and doing that work and making sure that we're listening to tenants when they're telling us that work isn't working out for them.
When will the new contracts be finalised?
We are aiming to have them in place by the middle of the year. So
Sorry, what was that?
start 1st of July, aiming for 1st of July.
The beginning of next financial year.
Changing tack a little bit, I'm from John Locke building. In the last, I don't know, say 6 months, we've had 2 suicides in the sea up there. Now the problem is that I've been there forever. So there doesn't seem to be, what we need is like a first aid form system for housing to handle these sort of crises. Every time we have a suicide, for example, who lands at the front door flat, you have to reinvent the wheel. You know, there should be like a kit, that's what I'm saying. Fall from height kit. This is what we do in this office if we have an incident. We go over, we have these forms ready-made, you know, if you are perturbed or if you witnessed or if you are disturbed or if you are upset by today's events, these are the numbers to call. You know, perhaps have in the old days when we were running the centre, they used to have a meeting. We'd have a meeting after things like that. We'd call a meeting, we'd get somebody from housing to come across. We might get a counsellor from St Vincent's in case people are upset. Now, you know, some are, some aren't, but every time it happens, there's a different response. They run around like chooks with their heads off. They don't quite know what to do. The most recent is they stuck a couple of posters up that said, if there was no, you know, dear tenant, or if you are upset, or nothing human in it. It was just a, you know, like, you know, a list of crisis centres. And it's not happening. That wouldn't only apply to North, but it apply to all places where you have an incident response kit. This is a standard what we do. We don't have to wander around and say, oh, you know, how did you handle it last time? This is it. This is what we do. We go over, we call a meeting, we put up posters that say if you are, it's not, you know, not rocket science.
Yeah, no, that's a really good feedback and a critical incident and a response for residents who have experienced the trauma of that. I think is really important, and how you provide that support. So I'll take that on notice. I don't know what's happening, and I'll take that on notice, and I can come back through to Jeff if we do some work on that and how to do that in a consistent way.
And if I could just extend that momentarily, like yesterday's incident with the siege, which, you know, well, anyway, everything turned out all right, and it was a little bit of a storm in the teacup from other residents' point of view. But after the police left, and of course the media are outside, and you know, after the police left, because the police wouldn't allow media on the property at all, in the car park or anywhere else. When the police left, they hunted the media, from what I saw. But as soon as the police left, media zoomed into the front door. You couldn't get in or out of that door without going through a media scrum. Now, so the solution is, I've always been told from committees and things, that you ring the maintenance call line. I rang them, they put me through the housing, something or other line. 30 minutes later, you're still waiting for 10 minutes. Your call will be answered in 10 minutes, so 30 minutes later, you're still there. These things are fine if it happens weekday, you just go across to the office, and if you're lucky, you get a CSO with a bit of brains who comes over and says, you're on private property, you have to go out on the street, stop harassing the tenants. When that's after hours, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So that's something else perhaps needs to be.
Yeah.
And just because it was all fresh in your mind.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think it's really great advice, and I don't have the answer for you at the moment, but I'll take it on notice. I think it's really important.
Yeah, and if you look at anything, you see all the media.
Yeah.
And of course, once they get a quote from somebody, they're happy to be up, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment, and I'm inspired by what you said and what other people have said, and it's very clear that there's a huge amount of talent amongst the tenants, and that I think part of your new system, which is full of hope and idealism, it's a wonderful time. I think part of it is trying to invest in the structures that actually bring the tenants together and bring out their talent and get them to lead and take responsibility. So
Absolutely.
that would be
Look,
marvelous.
I think it's number one, certainly at Bridge Housing, our big developments, the community rooms are led by tenants. They deliver the services, they come up with the programs. Bridge Housing was an enabler of tenant ability and skill. And I think that that's where we have to get to in homes. Tenants have the answers and the solutions locally. We need to resource and support tenants to do that. And we need to embed that voice in the way that we do our work.
I think if you're going to call us customers, especially because part of customer service in any government department is at the end of the day, we've got a quality plan.
Yeah.
And the quality plan and the safety plan and the environment plan at the end of the day, and the maintenance plan, contracts administration, you've got key performance indicators that you must meet. And the customer at the end of the day needs to be satisfied so that they can feed back to you or to the person responsible. If it's maintenance, ergo, the maintenance person that comes around, somehow to feed back so you get the key performance indicator on your accountability structure. So there's a lot of us that are willing to take on board certain aspects, but there's never the right person that you can get to talk about. I mean, because we're old, some of us are older, more mature and retired, it doesn't mean our brains retired. So I think we could give something back in a lot of ways with experience and skill that we still have.
Yeah.
It'd be a pleasure to have a bit of the ADHD put to rest for a little while and talk to other like-minded people, and especially when I start talking about key performance indicators, getting things to, but I'm just saying, I think a lot of us know that you have to meet something at the end of the day, as you've seen in the news about the asbestos and stuff. That all comes back to the contracts and contracts administration and reading the documentation and ensuring that that person goes out and comes back to you and says, yes, I did that job, how you sent me out to do it. Then we're happy, our tenants are happy, your tenants are happy, they haven't got to worry, and we don't have to worry you. That's basically where I'm coming from, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
Do you actively engage or employ people for these hotline, outreach services at the other end to field the calls from tenants?
They
Like
will
people
be,
from
they will be, not at the moment.
Housing,
Yeah.
So we
like
do,
lived experience.
yes, so we do have a lot of ex-trades people, a number as in the maintenance team already, and we are looking to them. We're looking at our skill base that we have, and to be the expertise in behind and in the call centres. So we do have a lot of tradesmen who are employees of formerly now Homes New South Wales. And some of them are semi-retired, and this is what this is a way for them to continue to contribute and apply their skills and knowledge to help and, direct. So that's the type of people that we have. And we'll
And
be
what about people that
expanding.
actually live in housing, like in social housing?
So,
affordable
yeah.
housing? Do you engage them to
Well,
sort of
I
fill
think
the
that,
pool?
yeah, I mean, I think not generally, not generally. I mean, this will be a new thing at the moment. All of the maintenance requests are going through the individual contractor. So we'll be bringing them back. I think the issue is where's the best use of people's expertise and experience? And then you have recruitment processes that encourage it. I'd love to see more tenants that are working as housing officers in the field. Like that would be fantastic because then you have that real experience and empathy, you know, and we've done things like that. You can't actually work for an NGO if you're housed by them, but there's ways you can do it that make sense. So I think all of those things are on the agenda. I think at the moment, having people who understand our portfolio, who are employed by government, who are providing that advice will be a really great step forward. And then it's about, once you've got those structures in place, how do you build on them?
So therefore, you couldn't set up a permanent advisory to,
Oh, we could set up an advisory as opposed to, that's the sort of structures we're looking at the moment. How do you bring the tenant voice into things like maintenance service delivery? How do you bring it in, and when you're developing a policy or a procedure, how do you have a formal mechanism to do that? Those things they're not in place at the moment, they're not.
Michael, just on the new contract, what's happening to try and get away from the system at the present moment where you have some contractors that are working for the contractors that sort of come in and are very, not getting much money, coming into a very particular sort of job, and quite often they don't have the customer service skills to be able to deal with clients. So the tenants are quite often complaining about those people. So part of that's a structural thing in terms of the way in which the sort of contracting and subcontracting works. But they're the people that are at the front, the people and the tenant has to interact with. So I'm just wondering how you're addressing that problem in the new system.
So firstly, we're not unwinding the whole way the whole industry works. So with subcontractors and contractors, but we have to work within that paradigm because that's the resources base and where the skills sit. It fundamentally goes back to what Rebecca's been saying about our supervision and our ownership, our first receipt, our ownership of the decisions to get it done, and then how we validate and check and follow up that it's actually been done. And that the responsibility for that following up and checking is with Homes New South Wales, not with the contractor.
Like if you send that out, you're getting immediate feedback whether or not tenants are satisfied with the work that have occurred. You can then analyse your data and you can see where it is and what contractor it is. And that's where the contract management comes in to actually hold people account. But we need those mechanisms now. At the moment, they're not in place. So.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Rebecca, I've got two questions. First one relating to Communities Plus. Under Homes New South Wales, does that mean Communities Plus, that approach is no longer moving forward? And if that's the case in terms of the types of mixes, affordable social market, is there room to decrease the market housing and actually say Waterloo South, increase the affordable and social?
Well, I think two things. I won't talk about Waterloo South. I think the government's come out very clearly and said it's now 50%. It was originally much lower than that. I don't think Communities Plus exists as we know it at the moment. What we look at is a different way of partnering to redevelop estate communities and to partner to deliver that. You know, there are different mechanisms that deliver a higher proportion of social and affordable housing. And that's through the way that you partner and deliver. And I think that it's true to say that there was a preference to always go with a private developer to develop land. While that might be the case on some sites, you need them because it's so large scale. The way that you do business locally doesn't have to operate like that. And when you start partnering with the community housing providers, for example, you get very different outcomes around the proportion of social and affordable housing. So I think that that's the way of the future. It's to look at what's our base level. Our base level as Homes New South Wales is to maximise social and affordable housing. That's our job. And so every time we're looking at a redevelopment, it's about how we maximise social and affordable housing for the community.
So my second question relates to Common Ground Camperdown, which the New South Wales government delivered to solve homelessness, 100 tenants, mixed tenancy with low-income tenants as well as formerly rough sleepers. The government didn't continue with any other housing first models of wraparound support services, but also that type of good mixed tenancy with that market housing. Will Homes New South Wales now explore more direct housing first initiatives for those?
Absolutely. I mean, everyone knows me and they know that I'm a housing first advocate, so I can't get up and say now all of a sudden not. The thing about housing first programs, and particularly the one that Common Ground was based on, is actually where it has emerged in the US, which is a big model, and where they're mixed tenure. It includes private market housing, affordable housing and social housing in the development. So you really need to look at how you can develop that and the proportions that you need. But absolutely, housing first work. The majority of people who are homeless get some assistance and move on and they're no longer homeless. But housing first works for chronic rough sleepers who have completely cycled through. The only way you end homelessness for that group is through a house. And that is exactly what we'd be looking for, that you would have mixed tenure developments that would enable housing first to occur. And that it's a stable form of housing and it's a stable community and you have a mix.
I've spoken to tenants, both former homeless from the Camperdown project, and you know, they are doing well and they want to be there long term. Other cities, Brisbane, Melbourne, Adelaide, they've got 2, 3 of these assets. It'll be great to see the new sector.
And you know, we get caught up on models and Common Ground is one of the models, but actually you could do that in any development. You can do it in any development, which is mixed tenure development, and target that social housing, because they're all social housing eligible to be in that program, and be really targeted about how you do that. And then in some areas, it might be on-site management. In other areas, it might be working with your local service provider to provide the wraparound support. But absolutely, it is the way to go. And I think what we've learnt through Together Home and a lot of the programs that emerged out of the pandemic is that those programs work. What we need to think about is how we fund housing first programs over the longer term. Homes New South Wales has been tasked with developing the housing and homelessness strategy, and central to that will be how housing first sits within our response to homelessness. Absolutely.
But one of the things that was a big push a few years ago in Waterloo around the Human Services Plan was to try and get more support for people coming out of homelessness directly into public housing. So there's a sustaining tenancies team that currently works in that sort of first 6-month period when people come out of homelessness. Now that currently is only funded through, I think, until halfway through this year, but that has been really important in terms of helping people coming out of homelessness, establishing themselves in public housing, and then they move into being handled by a regular CSO, but there's an intensive period at the beginning of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's ways you can do it. You either have specialist team or functional team, or you have housing managers who have like Housing First is embedded in many community housing providers, but they've got smaller portfolio management sizes of 200 to 1. So it becomes part of your core business to do that work in partnership with other services, and you can do that. So I think we will be evaluating all of those to say what's the best way, and it might be different in different locations as well.
And all those models, fantastic, that mix. But again, a lot of it depends on the very first question I asked, was that self-funded treasury rule type of thing, which you really have to shift. Otherwise, you'd have a challenge.
Just a bit of feedback and adding on to what you were saying about when particular things happen. I didn't really appreciate how the minister spoke to me about the 3 people that died during the relocation process. from people from 82 Wentworth Park Road. Those three people were long-term friends of mine, decades. And I don't understand why none of us got a call about anything. There was no, how can we assist you with what's happened? Communities Plus were, as I said, when they first walked in, communities minus, that's what you really mean. Because it is known that when relocations happen, that there will be deaths. That is known, that's documented, and that needs to be addressed because it's very violent. There's people that already have poor mental health, PTSD, depression, etc. To rub salt in the wounds and say that a building that's 37 years old is old, it is beyond ridiculous. Beyond ridiculous, and Waterloo, as far as I'm concerned, is in the same situation. There are buildings that are 100 years old, and yes, there were many individual homes that were called down during Liberal, but that needs to be really handled a heck of a lot better, because at the moment, I'm not just a disgruntled former tenant of 82 Wentworth Park Road, I'm a human being. And I've been treated abominably the whole process, from start to finish. And during my time when I was at 82. And the only reason I think any of us coped during our time was because we bonded together about our commonalities. The things that brought us together was the garden, was so many other things we fought back on and we were united about. And we got absolutely no help from DCJ or LAHC.
Carolyn, can I follow
yeah.
that with a question for the CEO? Yeah, considering that we're talking big game about empowering tenants within the structures of maintenance, will you empower tenants properly in the process that means life or death for many of them, which is demolition and removal?
So firstly, I'm going to call it, like, everyone knows that moving home is the most, having to move from your home is one of the most stressful things you can ever do in your life, right? And you need to, and our staff need to understand that, and they need to be empathetic to that, right? I think when we start having these processes, it's about exactly that. How are we talking to the people that are most impacted by this? So that's our residents, and how we actually respond to that. Part of homes is about trying to put tenants at the heart of decisions. That's not going to mean that every time you're going to do something that a tenant wants, right? But 90% of the time, you can make it a hell of a lot better if you're respectful and kind and empathetic. And that's why I want to start working on some of those things around the great work that has actually been done here, perhaps too late, but around the way that you engage around redevelopment of large estates and how you engage with communities in that process. There are many ways of doing that are not violent, that actually engage with people and bring them through that process with you in terms of their tenancy. So when we're looking at the scale of the crisis that we have in housing, yes, that will mean redeveloping properties to increase the density in locations. And it's not just something that public housing tenants are happy to deal with. Actually, it's playing out in every community, everywhere, where we're saying there needs to be greater density around train stations. You know, it's not just about public housing tenants having to do the heavy lifting. Everyone is going to have to do the heavy lifting around that sort of scale of redevelopment that's needed. But I do want to commit our staff to doing that in a way that's respectful and puts our tenants at the heart. I have heard stories in other meetings from residents about being the last to know about a redevelopment and those sorts of processes. That's the things I want to change. Every life matters, absolutely. And it is stressful having to move. even when we know that most people that move and relocate set up their home and they don't want to come back in the end of a redevelopment because they've established new friendships, they've established themselves in a new community and they don't come back. It's the way you do that with empathy and kindness and respect that needs to be how we deal with this sort of work in the future. But this isn't just a public housing issue. It's an issue for our whole community and everyone needs to do some heavy lifting around increasing density because that's the only way we're going to be able to address the housing crisis in any realistic way.
Rebecca, I just have a comment to make, and I'm not laying this at your door because you've only been in the job 3 days.
Probably someone will hunt up a briefing note I wrote about 20 years ago or something. I'm sure Jeff has spotted it.
And I actually intended to talk about 82 Wentworth Park Road, but I think it is an exemplar of how there is a need for a new approach to more rational planning. And the reality of 82 Wentworth Park Road is that 27 public housing bedrooms will be demolished and they won't be replaced for at least 3 years, longer than 3 years. The Calvert Street development, the demolition approval was 3.5 years ago and the building is only about 2 stories up, so it's longer than 3 years. So there is a better model and the better model is refurbishing and extending. And in at 82 Wentworth Park Road, refurbishing and extending would have added 1 less public housing bedroom than the demolition and total rebuild. And it wouldn't have involved reducing the amount of public housing for 3 or 4 years. And I think it is hypocritical actually for the minister to say, oh, we're demolishing this building because we want to increase the supply of public housing. In fact, it's reducing the supply of public housing. Now, and it is telling that when it went to the when it went to the local planning panel, a Crown application, of that panel of 4, 2 members declined to approve it. That's very unusual. And it only got carried off a casting vote. And I think that's a very strong message that this was badly planned, that the department are reluctant to let it go, but you have to take a new direction.
Well, I think I won't comment on 82, but I do think that we do have to look at different ways of doing estate renewal in Australia. You know, at the moment, there is a big tendency to go down and rip everything down and then rebuild. And I think we do have to look to the UK and other jurisdictions where they're doing redevelopments that maintain and hold existing properties, refurbish them and then build infill around them. I think there are other ways and to look at redevelopment that has both the social impact, minimises the social impact on tenants, but also looks at the environmental impact of demolition as well, because that's a major issue that we need to look at as an agency is our environmental impact through some of the work that and how we're committing to net zero as well.
And that's why getting several offers, if you like, of what it might be, because the assumptions and methodologies that are used in some of these proposals lead to certain conclusions. We really need to get several of those.
I guess, yeah, I know this is primarily for tenants, but I think one of the things that while you're stepping into the role, and we're all very aware of, it's going to take some while to bring capacity back to be able to have Homes NSW run things. But we're live in the middle of a number of redevelopment proposals. Waterloo is one, and REDWatch and others that the community has done this amazing work to try and say, remember how many people are going to be impacted and fight for that. There's lots of other communities having their estates reviewed right now, or their draft plans. And the land and housing now Homes NSW is the landowner that can say, we will own this partner that we're partnering with is going to do this, even if it's a good renewal, we demand you give these tenants these rights. And that's not currently in it. There's no protection. There's no acknowledgement that people, and Carol and others sharing these stories is really hard about people's diet. There's nothing currently in any of these rules that acknowledges and learns those lessons. It's something that is quite urgent for Homes NSW to do a bit of an audit of Explorer Street is a great example. Very, very poor, even though it's better than the others, kind of how a town's going to be looked after. So drafts are just miles away. In London, they give tenants a right to vote over the plan, and if the tenants don't agree,
the public housing firms that I've got. And they've shown how you can co-design well with people, but that's a real hard right. Because, you've got to win a vote of the tenants, and you want to make sure that you're going to work with them to remove their estate, the way they act will make their homes better. And yet Rosa previously said she's looking at that idea maybe for the future, but there's lots of things that could be done now, but it's quite urgent for the plans that are already in place. So I just wanted to say that because I think it's a planning thing, and I know the planning department, but land and housing homes and so on, you're the landowner, and you can assist. We will only issue this contract to you. You do it this way. Planning is not going to impose those rights.
Momentarily, sort of changing tack again, just going back to what Jeff's last comment was, regarding the contractors, et cetera. With the change in Bankier into smaller contractors and getting rid of subcontractors who are subcontractors, it would be, it would be really good, I think, if we had if contractors who were working for tenants or who come to do stuff for tenants had some respect or some education of the situation. I mean, I don't know about others, but, the number of derogatory comments I've heard from contractors who say, this is the building where, this is suicide towers, or this is where the bloke helped his partner up, or, it doesn't matter, they're living here for free, we're paying their rent. They're all quotes that have actually heard from contractors.
Yeah.
And that somehow, a little bit of, hopefully with this new change, there might be some, a little bit of education, or, perhaps you need, if you're the contractor, if you are subcontracting out, you need to tell this contractor that these people are the same as the bloke who's paying you to fix the toilet in Bellevue Hill.
Yeah, I think that the customer service standard will be absolutely applying to the contractors. And I think it's a live issue. I think lots of people experience this across the system. Like, it's not just the public housing. I know community housing tenants have told us those sorts of things before about the contractors work or subcontractors.
We're living there for free.
That's right.
Some contractors are great, but you don't need somebody.
Well, I mean, how many works orders did someone told me it was 600 and something? 600,000 works orders issued last year through LAHC. I mean, that's all individual interactions with our residents happening. But I certainly think it's exactly what we're telling our staff.
Yes,
our tenants pay your wage, they pay for the works here, they deserve a customer service. And I think embedding some of the things in the contract about following up with tenants when the work's been done. How did you find that? How did you find the performance of your contractor? Certainly when that's been brought in other areas, it really does drive a bit of change because people know they're being monitored.
Yeah, having to call a fella back 7 times.
Yeah.
To leaking pipe.
Yeah.
And the last fella comes and does, just, you were right, all I've got to do is cut and shut, replace it.
Yeah.
I mean, your 600,000 though, that you've just quoted, of that 600,000 that you've got on your books, how many of those have been on the books for 4 years?
No, it's that
Or 3
actual
years?
works orders issued and done, 600,000.
Oh, and done.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you meant you had 600,000.
No, not on the books, no.
You mean invoices?
I might have walked away from the job if I had a thing and it'd be like that. It's just me over the edge now.
But I've still got, tenants saying that.
Yeah.
That before COVID, I'm still waiting since before COVID. So why are we still waiting before COVID? Why are we still, and then they are right. We ring, I go to the NAB, we bring it up at the NAB, and then it goes to someone else.
Yeah.
Then that goes to someone else, and you never hear anything back.
Yeah.
The vicious cycle, and you get on it and you can't get off it.
Yeah.
And the tenants are vocal and they get aggressive and they're assertive, that's fine. However, it's a simple solution sometimes. If there's a runny toilet, go and fix it. Don't put it through 100 people, and then when you go there, the toilet's off the ground because they've pulled it off and thrown it out the window because I'm just making it. But I mean, it gets worse and worse and worse because they leave it go, and then you've got your tenant coming to you saying, look, I've rung them up 100 times, waited half an hour, no one's ringing it. You'll get all that for ages.
Yeah.
So if you can, yeah, that'd be great to, maintenance is a big one.
Yeah, well, we
Maintenance
know
is-
all the research shows that maintenance is the biggest driver of tenant satisfaction. You know, if you're not happy with the work and the way your property is maintained, you are not going to be, doesn't matter how great your housing manager is, you're not going to be happy with it. So, yeah.
It's a
a
lot of
base level
attitude
thing.
as well, though. I think, look, I'm not, a lot of tenants as well, their attitude leaves a lot to be desired as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sticking up for all tenants either, but, retrospectively, a lot of us, or a lot of them, do the process correctly. And then when it goes bad, of course, then it's given a bad, I think we need a big boost of positivity within the tenants around the whole.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of tenants.
Yeah.
However, I don't know how we do it, but I mean, you know, hopefully it's successful for you and we can get.
Well, we do it by actually delivering a better service. I mean, in the end,
It's
we've
to
got
do with
a change in Homes New South Wales, which is bringing lots of different agencies together under one leader, where we set some standards and we hold ourselves accountable to them, and they're publicly available, and we keep working towards it. You know, we've had a gradual dismantling of public housing and the social housing system. It's taken over a decade, and it's not going to take us overnight to get there. But I'm firmly of the view that if you've got the right leadership in, and you've got a minister who's obviously passionate about and wants to make a difference, and there are so many fantastic people that are working in this agency now that want to make a difference and want to be empowered to do that. So we just need to get those things right so that they can do that for them, for their own
As long
community.
as the people that are sitting there follow through with the truth and follow through with the processes.
Yes, 100%.
That's the whole
100%.
point. It's all right to say that.
Yeah.
But it's easy to sit there and do all the documentation as well and not know exactly what's going on.
Absolutely.
All right,
Absolutely.
I'm telling you.
So I guess we've heard tonight the aspirations for what Homes New South Wales wants to be. We've heard that what you as tenants, and people that are engaged with the system, your experience really matters into that, and that feedback becomes really important. We know that these problems don't get solved overnight, but we also know that tenants need to have a voice in terms of what things are working and what things aren't working, and feed that into the system. That feedback loop needs to be there. It's not going to change overnight, but you would hope that you're going to start seeing some of those things change over the next, few months, and in particular when it comes to the new contract on.
We need to change too, though. It takes two people to tango.
Yeah, it's also.
As long as you've got the right tools to do it and give the right information.
It's also, there's capacity issues for some tenants in terms of how they can be involved and what happens in terms of building that capacity and stuff like that. So not everybody can sort of stand up for people. So there's a series of issues in that. But I want to thank, I can't thank the minister because the minister's already there, but it is really greatly appreciated that the minister comes along, that Rebecca, 3 days from the job, is happy to be here. Michael, as the head of Land and Housing Corporation.
His portfolio in Homes New South Wales, there's no Land and Housing Corporation anymore.
But Land and Housing Corporation still exists as a.
And it's a
legal
holding
Legal
entity. A holding entity.
As a holding entity.
Legal entity that.
So someone might explain to me how the reporting lines and the.
I report to it.
And the organisational bits fit together, but that's good. And also thanks Matt, who's Minister's advisor, for sticking around in the Minister's absence. And David Johns down the back. The focus has not been on David, so he's been sitting there quite relaxed and happy. But thank you all for coming along. And thank you for your questions and your participation tonight. And let's hope that what comes out of this is going to be a much better and more responsive system for tenants. and that delivers better outcomes for social and affordable housing. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
your
Thanks for having me. Thank you.